Hey, what's up guys? Guardian here, coming to you guys with a deck profile today, going over my King of Knights Alfred deck. Yeah, I've been playing this deck quite a bit recently, the past weekend as well as the weekend before that. The deck's really fun. I enjoy playing this deck, which is more so than I can say when I initially saw Alfred get revealed. I was kind of like, eh, it's okay, like, not particularly looking forward to it, but we'll see what it's like in practice. And yeah, the deck's just fun. I wouldn't say it's like majorly competitive, but if you like Royal Paladins like me, you might have a good time with this deck. So yeah, so let's get into it. So for the ride line, the only important pieces here that you really need to play is the Blaster Blade. Since you do need that in the soul for Alfred to gain the power as well as the critical when your opponent's at grade 3. Tranquilla is the grade 1 choice since there's no real point to play Merrin in the deck because we're not like a blaster focused strategy like MLB. But Tranquilla's pretty good. Reveal 3 different grades from your hand, look at the top 5, and then call a grade 1, of course. So you can call any useful grade 1, which we have quite a few of them in the deck. And even if you don't call anything, you can still call the Tranquilla out, put it behind the Vanguard, and then boost with it. 18k swing with Blaster Blade, which is pretty good, and then for the rest of the game, it can just be a 2k passive addition to Alfred, since, of course, Alfred can't be boosted. So, yeah. And then Blaster Blade, of course, when you ride it, you can counterblast to retire a rear guard, and then if you don't retire, you draw a card. That's the only useful part of them. I mean, technically, you do have the rear guard skill of him, which is actually relevant in the current build because we don't have access to Galatine in English right now. So I am supplementing that with additional copies of Blaster Blade, which does have some synergy in the deck with another card, but I'll get to that in a bit. So that's it for the ride line, and of course we have Wingle Brave to stick with that Royal Paladin theme. So going into the main deck here, 3 additional copies of King of Knights Alfred. So yeah, really good foundation for him as a unit. So like I said, he gets 2k power for each rear guard, as long as Blast Spread's in your soul. And if your opponent's grade 3, he gets a crit as well. So full formation, he'll be 23k, which is really nice. And then his other 2 skills is that you can Energy Blast 3 to call a Royal Paladin from the deck. And the next time you would use a Counter Blast effect of that called unit, it's reduced by 1. So basically, with your Soul Saver Dragon, with this needing a Counterblast for the power up skill, that no longer costs a CB, so you can do it for free, which is good. And it's also good because you're going to need that Counterblast for Alfred's last skill, which is when he attacks, you can Counterblast to stand a Royal Paladin Rearguard, and if your opponent's grade 3, you can stand 2. So you're going to do 4 attacks when going first on your turn 3, and you're going to do 5 attacks when you go second, since your opponent will already be grade 3. And obviously turn 4 if you're going first as well. So yeah, 3 copies of King of Knights Alfred for the Persona ride, and then next to him, we of course have the rearguard form of Soul Saver Dragon. Now, of course, I do know this is called Virgil technically, but I am calling it Soul Saver. It is technically named Soul Saver Dragon in the skill there. So yeah, Soul Saver is pretty similar to how it was in terms of like you can counterblast to give 3 of your units 5k. But if you Persona Rod that turn, you can give 5k to your entire field, which is really important. Basically 10k to each column, except the Vanguard column, technically, because it can't be boosted, blah blah blah. But yeah, Soul Saver is a really good powerhouse for the deck. It's honestly one of the ways that this deck can reach a really high ceiling in terms of just its output. It's just the amount of power that you can generate through Soul Saver, since as long as you've got 1 CB, you can do your restanding with Alfred, and then you're going to have 1 free counterblast with Alfred's ability, as long as the unit that you're using is called from the deck, which is relevant, by the way. It means that you don't want to see these in your hand, because it means you got less of them to call from the deck to reduce the counterblast by. Bear that in mind. But yeah, you'll have a free CB with Soul Saver to get the power up, which means you can get a power up and a restand for just 1 counterblast, and then any additional counterblast, you could put that into more Soul Saver skills to get even more power. So that's where like the ceiling of the power and the pressure that you can put out with this deck kind of comes from. And then the final skill of Soul Saver is that when it's stood by your unit's ability, when it attacks, you can Soul Blast a King of Knights Alfred from your soul to gain a drive check, basically. So you're only really going to be able to do this on turn 4 the normal way, but there is a cheese way to do it, which is by putting a King of Knights Alfred into soul through your Kokoa, since you can put a card from your hand into soul with this skill, well, for the cost at least. So that gets you a King of Knights Alfred in the Soul early for you to do the drive check for Soul Server, which is very greedy. I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you've got so many Persona rides in your hand that you feel like you don't need all of them. So for that, with that point being made, the regardless piece of choice I've gone for, it's either one of two. I think you're either going to go with Caliburn or you're going to go with the Gradale. And the reason for this is because the Caliburn is basically a countercharger, which, as you can see, we need at least one counterblast for the restand in this deck. And if our opponent damage denies, because we are going to have Royal Paladins in our front row on some turns, which means we're opening the opportunity for them to attack them and then deny us a CB on the follow-up, which means we're not going to do much except attack 3 times. Yes, with like decently sized numbers, but that's about it. Pressure-wise, it's not going to be like super big, since we're also not going to be able to, do multiple soul savers or anything like that. So the Caliburn is basically just there to either draw us cards to dig further into our deck to see our Persona ride with Alfred, or it's going to give us the counter charge, which can sometimes come up. Now, I can also understand swapping this out for the Gradale, since that is an additional Persona ride technically, and it also gives you the freedom to maybe use your King and Knights Alfred copies with Cocoa to then put that into Soul, to then get the drive check enabled for Soul Saver Dragon, basically, earlier. So you can kind of go about it whichever way you want. I'm kind of valuing the counter charge right now, but I could also see myself swapping it for Gradale for the Persona Ride flexibility as well, with the drive check with Soul Saver. So that's it for grade 3s, so we'll move on over to the grade 2s. So to start with, we are playing 4 copies of the Rainbow Cycle. Reason I'm going for this is because Soul in this deck is quite flexible. We use it and we can also generate it through Cocoa. So having this is like a way to get an additional shield value with the Persona Shield ticket. It's just nice for some early game guard. Also with this, you can trigger it by just calling it to the rear manually, which is also fine because it gains 5k when it attacks at grade 3. Now you do have positions in this deck where you will have 2 Royal Paladins in your front row from turn 4 onwards, or if you're going second. So sometimes you might not always be able to utilize like non-Royal Paladin rear guards on the field. However, what you can do is you can call this behind Alfred and Soul Blast to basically turn this into a 10k shield in your hand. So you called this down, knowing that you're not going to utilize it in the front row because you need your Royal Paladins there, but you can at least call it down, Soul Blast, get a 10k shield in hand, so you basically plus 5 in terms of shield available in hand, whilst also still being able to fill up your formation to get Alfred to his full power, basically. And also you can use this as discard fodder for the ride deck as well. So it's got quite a few applications to it that I actually quite like, and I think like it fits pretty well in this deck in terms of how it plays. So yeah, it's pretty nice. And then next to him, I'm also playing 4 copies of Cadwalla. Since, like I said, I kind of want to make sure I'm getting to the Persona ride, and Cadwalla helps us dig for grade 2s or greater, so it can help see us at King of Knights Alfred. And like I said, grade 2, grade 3 turn when going first, you only need 1 Royal Paladin on your grade 3 turn going first, so that extra rear guard in the front row doesn't have to be your Royal Paladin, so it could be something like the Cadwalla, if you want to like be digging for the Persona ride or just anything else for that matter. If you want to just draw a card instead, that's also fine. Now, one thing with these that I'll say is that, let's say you have your Royal Paladin set up in your front row, what else can this do? Well, there are also decent cards to put into your soul with Cocoa, since Cocoa can look at top 2, add 1 to hand, and then the other one goes on top of the deck or into your soul. And if the card went into your soul, she gets 5k. But yeah, she basically digs through your deck for other stuff, but also stacks you a card on top of the deck potentially, which is really powerful. Like trigger stacking is always really good and very potent. So if you can see like a crit or even sometimes the over trigger, it can really set your opponent back just in terms of the amount of pressure you can put onto them, which is good. So you can utilize any like spare rear guards that you just don't need on the field with things like Cocoa, since you don't mind putting it into soul and like digging through your deck a bit and doing a stack effect basically. And that's kind of why I don't mind having the multiple soul blasts in here, because this also generates the soul. So you've got soul for days, basically, which is good. Since Soul Saver Dragon only soul blasts King of Knights Alfred, and you need to keep Blaster Blade in the soul anyway, you've basically got the Wingle and the Tranquilla, like for free, basically, unless you call the Tranquilla out. But you have ways of generating soul anywhere through the core. So yeah, hope I explained that well, but it's quite freeing with like the rear guards that you can choose in this deck, which is nice. But I do feel like these are pretty good, obviously for Ride Line discard, and this just to dig for pieces. Alright, so final grade 2s is 2 copies of Blaster Blade, and then I'm also doing 1 copy of the Scotty and 1 copy of the new Ace unit. Now, can you guess why these are in the deck? Yeah, it's because we don't have Galatine. So, Galatine was not only a Royal Paladin, but it was also our alternative energy blaster. So, the energy that we generate in the early game when going first will have 3 spare energy that we'll just not utilize. So, that way we can use Biscotti or the Ace unit to use it. And then when going second, we'll have 6 spare energy, because obviously Alfred is going to use that 3 energy once per turn that we generate, which means the extra energy that we get in the early game is just not going to be utilized at all. So I like having the 1 Biscotti and the 1 Ace unit just because it's the pretty good generic cards to have. You know, this can block a small attack. You could also counterblast as an alternative cost for this if you have excess CB. Although that doesn't really come up, I mainly just use the energy side of it. And the Ace unit is just a good filter option. You know, top 7 check, call something. Even if you're just calling like a booster down, like digging through your deck for like good reguards to call down, this is a good one as well. Because like I said, you know, grade 2, grade 3 turn of going first, you can afford having a non-Royal Paladin in the front row, and this is a good option. And then the 2 Blaster Blade. Let's talk about this guy. You know, I know this guy. He's you know, he's pretty famous unit, I heard. But with this, the only synergy he has in the deck is the fact that he can pop a reguard for free, since Alfred makes the CB, you know, 1 less, and that can sometimes come up for Sergion. If you're going against a deck that has like a board presence, you at least have Retire in this deck to get rid of something, so that your full board now gives you more rearguards than the opponent, so Sergion is now live. That's it. Also, it's a Royal Paladin, so yeah, if your Soul Savers are getting attacked, which, get used to that, Blaster Blade is an alternative Royal Paladin that you can call from the deck with Alfred, and at least generate a plus, and maybe pop something relevant, and yeah, it's basically just here as a stand-in until Galatine comes out, so there you go. But these are still good cards in general, you know, by their own means anyway. So that's it for the grade 2s, so we'll move on over to the grade 1s. So, for grade 1s, we of course have Sergion, which I just mentioned. Of course, Keter generic, really good. 13k booster, digs for pieces. Yep, don't really need to talk about Sergion that much. Because I already talked about the synergy with Blaster Blade, you know, snipe the rear guard, you've got more rear guards now than your opponent. Very easy to do. So there you go. Then we have 4 copies of Krakoa. I do apologize for this because I'm not oblivious, by the way. I do know this card is expensive, but when I got these in set 6, they were like £5 each. So from what I've heard, 1 copy is now worth like £20 or something. It's crazy. Like, Keter generics be expensive. What I can't do anything about that. All I can do is try and make a deck that I think is good and fun, and if you've got the cards, you've got them. If you don't, I'm sorry. Like, there's nothing much else I can do. But I want to provide you guys a deck list that I feel like is good. And Krakoa is a good card. There's a reason she's expensive. Not only can she do the cheese play with King of Knights Alfred by getting one into the soul early, it's a bit of a greedy play. I don't like doing it like at all, really. I did it once and I got punished for it. But I would advise trying that play if you're going to go for the Gradale build instead of Caliburn. But the reason I like the Caliburn is for the counter charge. So, you know, it's whatever you fancy. But yeah, the main thing with this is it's an 18k booster if your opponent gets a trigger, and it's a 15k shield if they get a trigger. That's really damn good. Also, the way I see this is kind of like a mini Sargis in a way. That's kind of how I see this. But also just the ability to stack the top of the deck and generate you soul as well is just great. Like I said, there's a reason she's expensive, but yeah, she's just a really good regard in this deck to be able to power up things, especially Blaster Blade, because Blaster Blade, as much as I love him, he doesn't gain any power. So you need Soul Saver to give this power. You need things like Cocoa to give him power, you know, to actually make him hit hard enough. So you're not hitting like a wet fish. So yeah. Yeah, Cocoa, really solid card. Then we're doing 1 copy of Topaz and 1 copy of Dindrain. Reason for these is just, well, Topaz is just generically good. You know, it's 20k shield if you don't need it as a rear. And as a rear, it's a top 5 check for a unit. So, helps you fill the board, makes sense. And then Dindrain is just in the deck as an alternative countercharge, basically. Like you see with the core, you've got plenty of ways to generate soul in this deck, so the Soul Blast 2 for countercharge is not too bad. But yeah, it's just in case. Thankfully, it hasn't came up yet, but I do like having the option available. Final grade 1 we have is just 4 PGs. Yeah, 1 Almataria and 3 regular PG. Went with this one just because I think it looks cool. That's about it really for the grade 1s. So yeah, we'll move on over to the triggers, which to start with, of course, we have the OT. I'm doing blue OT just because I am simple. You probably would want to play red in this deck, I'm not gonna lie. Red is pretty good because you can just stand your rear guards, make one of them attack twice with 100 million. I just like crits, and I also like the ability to recycle stuff from the drop zone, since that's not something I'm really used to having in Royal Paladin. In Keter Sanctuary, usually it's like through like a resurrection effect or something, but just adding anything back to your hand is just really valuable, you know? This is really good. So yeah, blue OT for now. And then other triggers, I'm doing the 4 skill crit, the 4 vanilla crit. Skill crit can sometimes matter with Soul Saver, maybe, to give it the extra 2k, but, you know, you're giving up 15k shield. It's like, unless you're in a really desperate situation, I wouldn't do it. But yeah, 8 crits, or like 9 technically with the blue OT, so that's pretty good. At the minute, I'm doing draws, but I am considering front triggers, because, like I say, you're doing 4 to 5 attacks to the stack, so front triggers can be good, and the 20k shield's also quite nice defensively. But with the draws, it's more so just so I can, like, rebuild my board, you know, get to, like, you know, my Persona rides as well. Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm getting to those consistently. The only ways I have with this is, like, drawing it, or like getting it through Cadwaller, basically. So yeah, or the Circuon. So, but you could swap these for fronts. I wouldn't blame you. And then the final trigger of the deck, of course, is our 4 heals, which went for this artwork just because, I don't know, Bringer of Distant Sounds, it kind of reminds me of like Epona and stuff. So yeah, I went for these artworks just because I like them. Yeah, pretty simple. But yeah, that's it for the triggers, and that's it for the deck. So I hope I went into it in enough detail for you guys, since obviously this is a new deck. I always like explaining my decks the best I could. But yeah, King Knights Alfred, it's fun. Don't think it's going to be a high contender, but this deck will get better when Galatine comes out in English, which hopefully we don't have to wait a year for, Bushrod. Please, can we at least play the deck with the new cards? You put it as a damn box topper in Korea. You could have done that for English. That's all I'm saying. Like, you know, English side of Vanguard needs a bit more love, please. Anyway, that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll put the deck log in the description as always. So, yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. This is Guardian, signing out.